from Ann Arbor, Michigan on WAAM, Talk Radio 1600, and on the World Wide Web, this is Veterans Radio.
Good evening, I'm Gary Lilly, and I'll be your host for the show, along with the man who has no fear of flying, but apparently an intense fear of landing, World Paratrooper Bob Gould.
Hello out there. Welcome to Veterans Radio.
And over in the control headquarters is the lady who does all of the grunt work for us in good weather.
Hear, hear.
Showing your thumb on radio. Yes, thumbs up. And on the board is the young man who keeps us on the air, Alan Black. Thanks, folks. Bob, the theme for our show is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And tonight we have another of those remarkable stories that exemplifies our show. It's a story of survival under conditions so horrible that so many of our men and women were not able to do so. Captivity in the Japanese prisoner of war camps.
I did a little research on that myself, so I can't wait for our guests tonight. That'll be...
And they will be Mike Pride, who co-wrote the book Too Dead to Die, the story of Steve Raymond, who is the survivor. Before we get into it, do you have some announcements?
Yes, I do. Okay, Gary. Ann Arbor Graf O'Hara Post 423 invites children of local men and women in Iraq and Afghanistan to a special event at the Post on Sunday, December 10th. That's going to be from 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The Post will provide a nice gift to all the children of the men and women in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and Santa Claus will be there to present it to them. So, if you out there know of anyone that would like to attend, we would like you to call John Kinzinger. That's John Kinzinger at 734-994-0444. One more time, that's 734-994-0444. And that's if you know of children that are of the troops, of our military people in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Well, great thing to do.
Great thing to do. And do provide the name, the age, and they would like to have the gender of the person.
That's for the
That's
gifts.
right. That's going to be for the gift.
Okay.
That's
that
great
good.
stuff.
Can you imagine what it does for the morale of the troops?
Oh, absolutely.
To find out that their kids are being taken care of.
I'm going to give that number one more time. Okay, that's 734-994-0444. Give them a call.
And you can do that if you want to make a donation also.
That's true.
Right? Okay, and do you have anything from Welcome Home?
Well, we do have some Welcome Home, Gary. The Welcome Home celebration was held by the Calgary Military Family Resource Center. And I love how they spell center, C-E-N-T-R-E. Huh?
British, right?
Well, that's Canadian. For 70 first rotation Calgary area soldiers. That was on Saturday, November 18th at the Kensington Legion in Calgary, Canada. Then again, the National Guard members of the 792nd Chemical Company returned home to Yakima, Washington on November 21st of this year. Soldiers from the 3rd Heavy Brigade Combat Team returned home to Fort Carson, Colorado on November the 22nd. And members of the, I'm going to get this, members of the Oconomowocs Bravo Company, Company 2, there we go, Bravo Company 2, the 128th Infantry, kind of blended together here.
Right,
I know how these things come out. Right, I know. They have to do that, right. Return home to Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. That's like Manitowoc.
Only with an Okana.
Right. So that we want to welcome them. And the troops from the 175th Army Reserve Unit returned home to Delaware, Ohio. Members of the Task Force Cobra returned home to Rio Rancho, New Mexico. 8 soldiers from the Pennsylvania National Guard's Company D, 126th Aviation, returned to Fort Indiantown Gap in Pennsylvania on Monday, November the 20th. 29 reservists from Arkansas's 392nd Chemical Company returned home on Friday, November the 17th. 320 troops from the Texas National Guard's 136th Signal Battalion returned home on November 17th to Fort Hood, Texas. Troops from the 842nd Signal Company returned home on Saturday, November 18th. And over 120 soldiers from the South Carolina National Guard Delta Company, 111th Signal Battalion, were welcomed home on Thursday, November the 16th. And last but not least, 600 soldiers from the 1st Battalion, Devonshire, and Dorset Light Infantry returned to the UK on Saturday, November 18th. Welcome home to all of those.
God bless you all. As I mentioned, we've got an amazing story tonight. And there's a book. I want you people out there to get your pencils and paper ready, because next week's show is going to be about gifts for veterans. Here's a really good one, especially for the POW in your life. This book is called Too Dead to Die. It's a memoir of Bataan and Beyond. The story of Steve Raymond is co-written by Mike Pride. This is what Ken Burns, the famous documentary filmmaker, has to say about it. The good war of our popular imagination disappears when we confront the harsh realities men like Steve Raymond experienced in World War II, and we're all the better for it. This is a riveting narrative, one man's desperate struggle for survival in the midst of the greatest crisis in human history. That's what Ken Burns had to say about Too Dead to Die. The story is about Steve Raymond, but we're going to start off with Mike Pride. Mike is the editor of the Concord, New Hampshire Monitor. He's a U.S. Army veteran, 1966-70, with the ASA, the Army Security Agency. As such, he was a Russian linguist, a voice interpreter or intercept operator, and later a traffic analyst on the East German border. Mike co-authored a book about the Civil War, My Brave Boys, that was published to excellent reviews. He's also a member of the committee that chooses the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. We're very pleased to have Mike Raymond on Veterans Radio. Mike, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Oh, thank you very much, Gary.
Tell us briefly about how your relationship with Steve Raymond began.
We have a mutual friend. We're both in the newspaper business. I'm in New Hampshire, and Steve is in the area around Tampa, where he retired some years ago. And we had a mutual friend there that we both had worked with, who knew I had written the Civil War history, knew that Steve had for many years been writing and trying to get his memoirs published, and just got us together and asked me if I'd take a look at the memoir, take a look at what Steve had written, and see if I could help him get it in between hardcovers. And so for 3 years, I worked with Steve and with the manuscript. And this fall, we finally got it into print.
What has stayed with you from this story?
Well, really, there are a lot of things. I mean, Steve had written a great deal. He kept the diary, and he also wrote a memoir himself right after the war. So to me, as a sort of an amateur historian, what I had found was that material written while things were happening or right after things were happening really the best kind of material to work with. And so what I found in Steve's story is just remarkable detail and a remarkable sense of the day-to-day life of both on the Death March and the prisoner as a prisoner of war afterwards. And I think that as I was working through the memoir, again and again, I would come upon scenes that just struck me as so riveting and authentic, and it just put you right there. So for me, working with the memoir, those were the things that caught my attention.
Most stories are written years later because it takes years before the people who experience it can come to grips with it. But as you mentioned, Steve kept notes all the way through his prisonership, and then started this immediately afterwards. So did that give it a greater sense of authenticity or personality?
I think so. I think, if you write something long after the fact, your memory tends to kind of gloss over certain aspects of things. You misremember things. You remember things in ways that weren't quite, that aren't quite true. And you also forget a great deal over time. And so I think the fact that he had written it. He had written it down as it happened, many of these scenes, and also after the fact, he had sat down right after the war. His dad had built him a room on a barge where they lived on Anna Maria Island in Florida, set him up with a typewriter and a chair, and Steve had sat there and pecked away at it for the whole remainder of the time that he was in the Army in 1946. So the fact that it was so freshly written, the original parts of it, made it special to me when I was working with it.
We're experiencing a little static on the lines between here and Florida, so I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we'll get right in there with Steve, and we'll have you both on the line. I think we're going to ask Ingrid to, we'll have you hang up, Mike, and then Ingrid will call you back, see if we can pick up a better line. But this last question before we do, you did all of this by email and through a third party. When you finally met Steve, was he what you expected?
Well, he was, because, we had spoken on the phone so many times, and we had worked both in email and snail mail on the manuscript itself. So I think that, I knew what to expect, and I grew up in the same part of Florida where Steve lives, so I had a sense of the Florida cracker mentality, and so I was able to kind of know him before I knew him. But then when I met him, I was so impressed with his gentlemanly qualities, and also his, when you look at someone who's lived this kind of experience and survived this kind of experience, because that's what it is. It's a story of survival. On the one hand, the story has stayed with him throughout his life. He's not been able to, kind of forget what happened to him on Bataan or in the prison camps, in the work camps. But he's also developed a kind of, to me, sort of healthy attitude about it. It's the same attitude you see with a lot of World War II veterans. We just did our job, and this happened to be my job. It was a terrible job, but what I really wanted was to come home, and he made it home. So I had all this sense of him before I met him, but it was certainly reinforced by meeting him.
Okay, Mike, thanks. Why don't you hang up now? Ingrid will call you back, and we'll go right to Steve Raymond.
Sure.
Thanks.
All right.
Steve Raymond joined the United States Air Force in 1940 to avoid being drafted into the infantry. After training, his unit was shipped to the Philippines. 3 weeks later, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and the next day our bases around Manila. The surprise was complete, and our side found itself with no aircraft, so all Air Force personnel became infantrymen. After forming a defensive line across the Bataan Peninsula, our troops held on against a well-equipped Japanese Army and Air Force. Out of ammunition and food, U.S. forces surrendered on April 10, 1942. The misery had just begun. Steve Raymond, thank you for being here with us on Veterans Radio to tell your story.
Thank you very much.
You write about some of the horrors you witnessed on the Death March. What was the worst thing that happened to you?
Well, the worst thing that happened to me was I was thirsty, hadn't had any water for some while, and found a slough that had some water in it, and I didn't really pay very much attention to what was around it. I had made a mad dash for it, expecting a Japanese bullet in the back any minute, but I didn't get it. I started drinking, and then I looked up, and there was a dead carabao in the corner of the pool. He was bloated, and flies were all over him, and I really expected to get the bullet again, but no bullet. And I looked down there at the Jap guard, and he was laughing. And then I realized that this swollen carabao was likely to kill me, but I didn't get any trouble from it for some reason or other. I don't understand why. And so I filled up my canteen and went back to the march and shared my canteen with a couple of buddies. That was about the closest thing I got to getting clubbed.
I read your book, and I knew a lot about the Bataan Death March. I thought I did a lot of reading about World War II when I was young, and the misery that you describe in the Death March and then afterwards is something that totally caught me by shock. There were 17,000 Americans, and was it 60,000 Filipino soldiers that were captured?
Roughly, that's correct.
And about 650 Americans and about 5,000 Filipinos died on this. Was it a 6-day march?
Well, it varied from the time you started until it was over with, but the Japs kept us moving, and some of us made it in 5 days, some made it in 6 days, some made it in 7 days.
And if you lagged behind, you were likely to be bayoneted, shot?
You were likely to get it, yes.
Yep. And the reason why you were so weak, why so many died, is because of holding on prior to surrender. You started off at white rations, then you were cut down to half rations, and then quarter rations, and then eighth rations. So you were already starving by the time the march started, correct?
Yes, and we didn't get any food during the 3 days of retreat. We had nothing food. We managed to knock down a coconut, shoot it down from one of the coconut trees, and opened it up. And we also got one from
some of the fruit from it.
Yes, from not from that, but I can't think of it right now. But it was a pineapple. Oh yes, it was a pineapple. One pineapple.
One pineapple amongst how many people?
There was about 3 or 4 of us in this particular bunch.
Okay.
And
some of your friends didn't make the end of the march?
Pardon me?
Did some of your friends not make it to the end of the march?
Yes, I really don't know who didn't make it because I don't know who started on the march. But with this, quite a few of us that didn't make it.
Well, do you mind telling us about some of the brutality that you faced? Yes,
there was no. I have no regret about talking about it. At night when we stopped, they had us put us in a stockade where there was a fence around it and had guards posted all around wherever we were sleeping. Well, we were sleeping in a place that had been a stopping spot the night before by a group ahead of us. And they shit all over the place, and we rolled in it. We couldn't help it because that was the only place to sleep. We'd go to sleep wherever it was, and I saw several Filipinos try to start a fire to cook some rice, and the Japs would shoot them, jump on them, break their ribs, and do anything that would weaken them and put them out of business. And we were afraid to do anything about it at all. We observed it and thought, what the hell? It's terrible, but we can't do anything about it.
You had you wrote in your book that you had some regret over not trying to escape before the death march began. Some people were talking about it. Was escape was it really practical at that time?
We had really not been told anything by our superiors. They didn't tell us about what to expect or whether we should make the effort to get away or not. And this particular one guy came up to me, wanted me to go with him to escape. Well, we really didn't know anything about the Philippines. We couldn't recognize a Filipino from a Jap. And so I told him no, that I wasn't going to go with him. But it was simply that he was such a flake that I didn't want to go with him. And but we had arrived in the Philippines only 17 days, I think it was, before the Japs attacked us, and so we didn't know anything. We had not received any instructions from our superiors to how to react when we were faced the Japs.
Sure.
And we had seen one group of Filipino soldiers who had surrendered before we did. They had a white flag, and he tied it to a rifle. The rifle was stuck bayonet first into the ground, and the Jap said something to the Filipino sergeant who was in charge of the group. Apparently, the Filipino didn't understand what the Jap had said, and so he remarked with a salute. Well, the Jap pulled out his gun and shot him right there, and that's the man who's lying on the road of the
on the cover of your book.
Picture on the front of a book.
Okay, Bob Gould has a question for you.
Yeah, Steve, Bob Gould here. During the march, was there military decorum observed? In other words, rank was honored, and there was a system of order by rank, and like we saw on Bridge of the River Kwai, where they had to get the officers and the men in a coordinated military unit in order to have discipline, in order to have orders, or was it just helter-skelter?
It was helter-skelter. It was every man for himself. The Japs had some order because they were changing their guards every 2 hours. They were working with us, but we didn't have any order whatsoever, except we had to watch out for the Japs.
And so they didn't recognize rank at all?
They didn't recognize our rank, no.
Right. So
they recognized their own rank, but not our own. Our officers walked with us, all except the field grade officers didn't. The field grade officers were transported by the Japs.
Okay.
To wherever we were supposed to be meeting. Our first camp was Camp O'Donnell, and.
Before you get to that, the Death March was just the beginning of your 3.5 day ordeal. At the end of the march, they loaded you in trains to transport you to Camp O'Donnell. Can you tell us about about that experience?
Yes, we were jammed into freight cars. I could see that the way they were working, that we were going to be jammed in solidly, and we would have to stand up. And we didn't know how long we would be moving. So we got in, they jammed us into these cars. As it worked out, they were absolutely loaded to the gills. There was no room for anybody to sit down or do anything except stand up and lean against somebody else. So I saw a crack in the wall, and I kept moving toward it until I got to it, and we hadn't started yet for wherever we were going. And I used that crack to suck in air from the outside for the whole 4 hours that we were in this.
Were men getting sick while they were in the car?
Oh yes, they were getting sick. They were screaming that they were dying, and this, that, and the other thing, and there were plenty of them dying. Standing up, and it wasn't until we finally got to our destination, and the Japs unlocked the doors and started letting us out, that the dead ones fell to the deck. They had no. We weren't able to do anything for the dead ones.
How many of you were in those boxcars?
There were probably 120.
100?
In a boxcar that was meant for probably at the most 30 or 40.
And so you were jammed in, standing up, back to back, chin to chin.
Yes.
Men were getting sick, and when they got sick, they didn't just mess themselves; they messed the people near them.
They messed everybody that was around them.
And that included diarrhea.
They're vomiting too. They were vomiting, and they were urinating, and they were defecating, and it was all over us.
That's okay.
We couldn't do anything about it.
Then when you got to the railhead, how long a march was it to Camp O'Donnell?
It was only about 15 kilometers, something like that.
So you made your first day into the camp.
Yeah.
Steve, we're going to be going to a break, and when we come back, Mike is going to read a passage from your book about the conditions that finally came to be in the camp.
Okay.
And so right now we're going to a break and to the Medal of Honor.
All right.
The Medal of Honor is the highest award for valor in combat given a member of the Armed Forces of the United States. There have been over 3,400 recipients of the nation's highest award. This is one of them. Marine Sergeant Grant Timmerman held a Japanese grenade to his chest to save his men. Details after this. Advancing with his tank a few yards ahead of the infantry in support of a vigorous attack on hostile positions, Timmerman maintained steady fire from his anti-aircraft sky-mount machine gun until progress was impeded by a series of enemy trenches and pillboxes. Observing a target of opportunity, he immediately ordered the tank stopped. Mindful of the danger of the muzzle blast as he prepared to open fire with a 75 millimeter, fearlessly stood up in the exposed turret and ordered the infantry to hit the deck. Quick to act as a grenade hurled by the Japanese was about to drop into the open turret hatch, Timmerman unhesitatingly blocked the opening with his body, holding the grenade against his chest and taking the brunt of the explosion. The Medal of Honor series is a production of Veterans Radio.
Yes. And we're back. And we're going right to the...
I think we can go right here. Need any home repairs? Call a veteran. Pat the Handyman is a licensed and insured remodeler who served in the U.S. Army. He can paint your home, install a kitchen, or finish those repairs you started and somehow never finished. So give Pat the Handyman a call at 734-260-1158. That's 734-260-1158, and say you heard about him on Veterans Radio.
For you boating enthusiasts out there, now it's getting to be that time of year, and I want you to make sure that you give my friend Ray Schrader a call at Schrader Yacht Sales in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, our national sponsor here. Give Ray a call at 732-899-8010. Did you know, I bet you didn't know this, the first Chris Craft was built in 1874, and today that tradition continues. Wherever you go, it is a boat that is a destination in itself. Designed without compromise, it is exhilaration taken to the extreme. Whichever model you choose, each one will catch the eye, steal the heart, and fill your lungs with healthy outdoor air. Come into Schrader Yacht Sales to experience all of this for yourself. So give Ray a call again at 732-899-8010, and he promises he'll come all the way to Michigan if you need him to deliver his boats. That's Schrader Yacht Sales. That's SchraderYachts.com. SchraderYachts.com.
Quantum Physical Therapy in Ypsilanti Township provides cutting-edge conventional and alternative rehabilitation services. Their core business is orthopedic and sports physical therapy, as well as extensive occupational and pain management services. Quantum Physical Therapy is located on Whitaker Road in Ypsilanti and can be reached at 734-483-9200. That's 734-483-9200.
We can, Conahan Chevrolet, we can.
And we're back on Veterans Radio, and we want you all to remember to see Carnahan Chevrolet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll come back later on with the correct CD. The story of the prisoners of war that were under the Japanese is something that we tend to look at as statistics. And, it's people, Bob, it's people, and it's often cases, a lot of these were teenagers, young men in their 20s.
And they just got there. What did he say, 17 days?
17 days.
To that?
But the whole thing is this is a story of people. When you say 28% of the prisoners under the Japanese died, or 47% according to some, these are young men, in some cases women, that died of starvation, of disease, of malnutrition, of beheading, of bayoneting. These are young people that died, not 28%. These are young people in the tens of thousands. And Mike Pride is with us, and he's going to read a passage from the book that hopefully gets a little bit of the feel for what they went through. Mike, are you ready?
Sure, I am. This is from Too Dead to Die. It's a point in 1942 where Steve is in the Philippines in a camp called Cabanatuan, and he's performing farm labor under severe conditions. Men were still dying regularly at the camp, and one of the hardest jobs that the soldiers had was burial detail. And I'm going to read you a passage that is Steve's turn on burial detail. And I think I mentioned at the top of the show that when I was reading the manuscript originally, there were certain passages that I came to that just stopped me in my tracks, and this happens to be one of them. And I know that there'll never be a Memorial Day when I don't think of this burial detail passage when that day comes. So here it is. This is Cabanatuan in 1942, and Steve Raymond from Too Dead to Die. I drew burial detail one day when there were 27 litters in the morgue. It took 2 men, sometimes 4, to hoist a litter, and I was teamed with Mac, my pal from Arkansas. He and I were veterans of this operation. As soon as we were ordered to begin, we ran halfway down the line of corpses and chose an emaciated body. The man couldn't have weighed 100 pounds. Those on the detail who hesitated inevitably wound up on a crew of 4 with a victim of wet berry, which could bloat a man to 300 pounds. Mac and I were lifting 50 pounds each, while the 4 lifted 75 each. It was raining as we left the morgue and started through the hospital toward the gate. Living skeletons sat under the eaves of the hospital bahais watching the procession. They said nothing, but I could feel their eyes watching us. I knew they were thinking they might soon be the guests of honor on our litters. Many had the classic symptoms of starvation. They had grotesque bony knees, elbows, feet, and hands, all looking as though they belonged to someone much larger. Their hip bones seemed ready to punch through their skin, and their chests were hollow. They had high cheekbones and drawn faces, with skin pulled around their mouth. Valleys cut between their ribs, and their backbones seemed as exposed as those of prehistoric skeletons in a museum. Their eyes were the only eloquent things about them. We neared the gate, and the chaplain emerged from his bahai. He had wrapped his Bible carefully in canvas and tucked it under his arm. He joined the lieutenant at the head of the detail and strode along with the assurance of St. Francis, coming ashore through the waves at Cebu. At the gate ahead, the Japanese, at the sight of us, hurried to tie gauze masks over mouth and nose. They counted us quickly and made sure we did not linger. Out on the road, we halted to switch shoulders. Shortly before we reached the holes, we halted again. It was raining all the time now, sometimes gently, sometimes hard, and I was cold. Goose pimples covered my arms, legs, and belly, and I was glad I had not worn my shirt, because it would be dry when I got back. The rain had one advantage. It reduced the overwhelming odor, seeming to lay it low, as though it were damping down the dust. The cemetery did not yet look like a burial place, but we were making progress. We had erected one cross, probably 15 feet high, and it leaned in the center of the area. Half a dozen smaller crosses marked communal pits where most of the dead lay. Other graves were marked either by raised earth, indicating recent burials, or sunken earth, indicating older graves. There were dozens of these mounds and sinks. We had scrounged lumber from work details for the crosses, planning to mark them all, but it was hard to keep up. The proper procedure in rolling a man into his grave was to raise the offside poles of a litter. As the first few crews performed this task, we could see the bodies disappear and hear them land with a splash. But as we moved along the pit and reached slightly higher ground, the sound changed. The bodies began to hit with a sickening thud. The men we were dumping were as naked as the day they were butt-slapped by nurses. Some were landing on other bodies. Mac and I dropped our body in the hole, moved to the windward side of the pit, put down our litter, and waited for the last body to be dumped. The chaplain spoke briefly for our benefit. Half a dozen men leaned on shovels, waiting with resignation. The chaplain made the sign of the cross, and the grave diggers began to shovel football-sized clumps of wet earth into the pit. The thud of the earth hitting the wretched bodies brought my stomach rushing up into my throat. The scene was often repeated, complete with sound, in my nightmares. And as I said, when I read that, I just get chills, and I know that when Memorial Day comes, I will remember those men being dumped into those graves.
Steve Raymond, did that bring back bad memories?
Yes, it does. I can't forget that kind of scene. That scene that we all saw from time to time. I have a note in this book that says, I can't forget it. And I can't. Even though it was 60 years ago, I still can't forget it.
That was a daily scene for you.
Yes, it was. We always had a parade for the cemetery, and it was, I think it was around August, the middle of August of 42, before we didn't have a death at Bataan.
And that was 42, and you still had another 3 years to go.
Oh, yes. It was just beginning.
It was just beginning.
Yes.
And then you went to Camp Bataan, and that was a farm camp. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. We had a large area. Since I wasn't a farmer, I had no idea how big it was, but I thought it must be 1,000 acres. Well, friends have told me that couldn't be that big, but it was a large area which hadn't been cultivated, and so it was covered with Kogan grass, which is the stuff we got around here that's been imported from, I guess, Japan or Philippines, I don't know from where. And Kogan grass has a terrific root system, and we were digging it up with fenders and car fenders and things like that. The Japs finally gave us some grubbing hoes, and weavers.
And what were you growing?
We were at that particular time, we weren't growing anything. We were just trying to cultivate the property, make it available to cultivate. And we eventually had to go to sweet potatoes, rice, peppers.
Did you guys get any of the food that was grown there?
We got only what we could steal and what we could get away with.
And you were very emaciated at that point.
Yes, we were growing stuff for the Japs at Bataan.
We're going to a break, Steve, and when we come out of that break, I want you to I'm going to ask you some stories about what happened when you were out working in the fields. What happened to some of the men, and some of the men that they thought were escaping. Right now, we're going to go to a break.
Good enough.
We're talking to Steve Raymond and Mike Pride about their book, Too Dead to Die. It's a memoir of Bataan and beyond, the story of Steve Raymond and all of our POWs that suffered under the hands of the Japanese. before we get into the story that I asked Steve to talk about, Mike, how can someone order this book?
Well, it's available on Amazon.com. It can also be, you can ask at your local bookstore for them to order it. It's not all around the country because it's such a small publisher. The publisher is Plaid Swede Press here in Concord. Anyone who wants to can also just email me at cmpride@yahoo.com, and we can arrange to do it that way as well.
Or Amazon.com.
Amazon.com, also available there.
Too Dead to Die, Steve Raymond, and Mike Pride. Steve, I asked you about the people that the Japanese thought were escaping.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us something about that?
Yes, they, every time we went out on the farm to water, for instance, we would go out late in the afternoon and carry a couple of 5-round cans of water from the creek, which was about 2 miles away, to pour on whatever we were growing. Well, they kept expecting somebody to escape, and every now and then somebody would be sick. They would have a malaria attack or something like that, and crap out off on the side of where we're working. Might be gone for 2 or 3 hours, and oftentimes wouldn't show up when it was time to go back into camp. And the Japs would start looking for them. And they always assumed that whoever was there had tried to escape. Well, nobody was going to escape from the farm. After all, there was no, we didn't know where the hell we were, and we were completely
you guys were weak from malnutrition.
And also, there were white men in a country where there weren't any white men,
sure.
So they would be obviously seen right away.
And we weren't sure that all the Filipinos were friendly.
Well, they were probably afraid for their lives. Yep.
But we didn't know for sure. And the Filipinos got bombed and shot and shot several times around us because they had protected a prisoner who had pulled off the side of the road to rest or something like that, you know. And so...
so a prisoner would pass out and be crawling on his hands and knees?
Yes, he would. He'd be crawling back toward camp, toward the place where we were sleeping, and the Japs would pick him up, haul him, beat him up first, and then haul him back into camp. And they'd assume that he was trying to escape, and they would just work him over real good, and tie him up with some wire. They had very little rope, and they would use wire instead of rope to tie him up, and
tie him to a post.
Yes, tie him to a post, and put him out front of the guardhouse. And the Filipinos, as they came by, were ordered to pummel the prisoner, and they would slap him, but they wouldn't slap him very hard. Once in a while, they would have to go back and do it again. But
would they leave him there?
Leave him there until he died. And sometimes it would be a couple of days. Sometimes it would only be half a day, because the guy would be in such poor condition.
How old were these prisoners?
These were, like you said, 20, 25-year-old people.
These were 20, 25-year-olds, and that was how they died.
Yes.
So many of them. Yeah, there's a couple of things in your book, and we're not even going to be able to get to the hell ships, to being used as slave labor in the industrial plants or offloading ships in Japan. We're just not going to get to that. But there's a couple of questions about the last one about Cabanatuan. Cabanatuan, I know I'm mispronouncing it. You said in the book, when you were finally released from the last camp after we'd won the war, that those guards and that commandant hadn't treated you as badly as the rest. You were still beaten, but not as badly as in the other camps. And so you just wanted to get home. You didn't want revenge. But you said that you were sure by then that the guards and the commandant at Cabanatuan had been killed by the prisoners. Were you aware that the Rangers did a raid on Camp Cabanatuan to release the POWs, and that in that raid they had killed all of the guards and the camp commandant in the assault? Were you aware of that?
No, we weren't.
That was
and it wasn't. Cabanatuan was not the aiming point for that raid. That raid was for San Tomas to release civilians. There were 2,500 civilians that were interned there at the University of Santo Tomas, and that's where the raid was aimed at that group there.
Actually, you may not have heard about it, Steve. It was the subject of a recent book, and there was a movie made of it.
Yeah.
The Rangers assaulted the camp. They only lost 1 or 2 men. They killed every single guard. They killed the camp commandant in the assault. They didn't murder them. They killed them in the assault.
Yes,
they freed the POWs. Yep, they freed the prisoners and brought them back.
And those were people who were too weak to be transported to Japan. They had been left in Cabanatuan simply because they couldn't. They didn't take a chance on trying to move those people to Japan. They didn't figure they would make it.
Looking back on it, how do you feel knowing that all of those guards and the commandant were killed in that assault?
Don't bother me a bit.
Okay.
I don't have a Jap car or any other Japanese equipment that I can get away from. My computer, I suppose, is half Japanese. Maybe it's more Japanese than that. But no, my car is not a Japanese car, and I have never had one, and I won't have one.
And how do you feel about it? How well they're doing economically in this country? May I ask you?
Well, they're getting in the Philippines what they didn't get with their arms.
You went back in 2000. Well, you went back in '67 on the 25th anniversary,
yes,
and in 2002.
In 2002.
For the 60th anniversary.
Yes.
How did you feel? What were the feelings as you went back?
Well, we were really surprised at how the Philippines had recovered, but not completely surprised because the Japanese did it with their paychecks. There were so many Japanese companies that have outlets in the Philippines that we could see they were satisfied with buying their way back into the Philippines.
And so what was it all about when it could have been done economically? Steve, the liberation, you started believing that the Americans were going to win. You saw air raids, you saw destroyed Japanese cities. What was the feeling as that began? Was there fear that you were going to be eliminated? Was it?
Well, we did think that, and every one of us had a weapon of some kind. Mine was a dagger, a wooden dagger. I once had a steel dagger, but I lost it, and not a dagger, like a piece of scrap metal.
Uh-huh.
That I had sharpened on the concrete of the concrete floor of where we were sleeping. Those were my weapons. They wouldn't have done me a bit of good. They might have saved me. I might have gotten one Jap if they had turned on us, but that probably was all. And no,
We've got a minute left. Can you tell us about the liberation?
Yes. I had been transferred from Cabanatuan to another camp, and
that was in Japan.
Yes, and this is on the west coast of Honshu, and we were unloading soybeans, rock salt, and rice, and it was a beautiful fish camp that had been canning. They had canned fish. I don't know what kind of fish they were able to catch there, but it was on the water, and that was where we were, and we stayed there for almost 3 weeks after the surrender was signed before we brought an American.
How did you hear the surrender? We got 30 seconds.
Well, Hirohito was giving a radio broadcast, and the people had never heard his voice. They didn't know that for sure that this was he, although the Kimagaji was the national anthem was played, and later the Japs told me that the guards told me that he had surrendered.
Steve Raymond, we're out of time. We haven't covered but a bit of your story. And for you folks listening, Too Dead to Die by Steve Raymond and Mike Pride can be reached on Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon.
And I have copies also that they can get from me.
Okay. We'll put that up on our website. Steve Raymond, Mike Pride, thank you so much for being with us, and congratulations on your survival, Steve.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. I'm 90 years old, and it's...
90 years old for a guy that for 3 years was trying to make it to live to the next day. Amazing. Amazing. Congratulations, and God bless you. And now, what's happening for next week, Bob?
Whether looking for a new or pre-owned car, visit Carnahan Chevrolet in Ypsilanti. Their friendly professional staff is waiting to help you. Call them at 1-800-724-2043 or reach them online at www.carnahanchevrolet.com today. That's Carnahan Chevrolet, Carnahan.
That's what's happening next week. And folks, next week is going to be Gifts for Veterans. Too Dead to Die is a good one. And that'll be hosted by Dale Thornberry. What else we have?
Okay, we want to thank our sponsors, Gary Lilly and Associates of Ann Arbor, the Sidetrack Bar and Grill of Ypsilanti, Depot Town, Quantum Physical Therapy, right there on Whitaker Road in Ann Arbor, Carnahan Chevrolet in Ypsilanti, and Schrader Yacht Sales in New Jersey.
And until then, you are dismissed.